Welcome to Championship Weekend Fantasy Pros. My name is Andrew Erickson, aka The Props Prophet. Today I'm coming at you with my favorite PrizePicks plays, my top 10 for Conference Championship Weekend. Again, as always, if you don't like my picks, you don't want to tail them, go check out some of your own picks that you can find over in the Betting Pros Prop Bet Cheat Sheet. Pulls the highest plus EV plays every single week for every NFL matchup. And with that, let's unveil my top 10 PrizePicks early projections for Conference Championship Weekend. Isaiah Pacheco, more than 63.5 rushing yards. Starting running back Isaiah Pacheco rushed for nearly 100 yards last week, 97, averaging 6.5 yards per carry, scored one touchdown, had a long rush of 29 yards. He also caught a lone target for 14 yards, played 72% of the snaps against the Bills. I expect Pacheco to get fed as a rusher in his upcoming matchup against the Ravens, so I'm looking more than his 63.5 rushing yards prop this weekend. Pacheco has 89 plus rushing yards in 3 straight games and 60 or more rushing yards in 6 of his last 8 games played. And the Ravens' run defense has hardly been a gauntlet to face. Since week 6, they've allowed nearly 95 rushing yards per game to running backs at the 4th highest yards per carry, 4.7. 6 of the last 8 running backs they have faced have gone over 55 rushing yards. Same matchup, other side of the field, Lamar Jackson, less than 212.5 passing yards. I'm leaning heavily towards the under on Lamar Jackson's passing yard prop set at 212.5 yards. The Chiefs defense has held Tua Tagovailoa and Josh Allen to sub 200-yard passing yard games the last 2 weeks. And no quarterback that the Ravens' first-team defense has faced in the last 4 games has gone for more than 200 yards passing through the air. Conversely, I'd rather just take the over the more than on Jackson's rushing yards prop set at 59.5 rushing yards. The Chiefs have faced the most rushing attempts to quarterbacks this season. That's the way that I would approach Lamar Jackson in the prop market for Conference Championship Weekend. Last but not least, in this Chiefs game against the Ravens, Rashied Rice, more than 6.5 receptions. Rice had 4 targets last week for a 19% target share, caught all 4 for 47 yards, averaged nearly 12 yards per reception with a long of 25 yards. He also led the Chiefs in wide receiver snaps played at 64%. He also ran the most routes. Overall, I don't love a ton of the player props in this Chiefs-Ravens game other than the Rice prop. The Ravens rank 2nd in the NFL in targets to wide receivers per game faced. 8 of the last 11 wide receivers have gone over their catches prop against the Baltimore Ravens. Rice has 6+ catches in 6 of his last 9 games played, including 8 or more catches in 3 of his last 4 road games played. When they go on the road, Patrick Mahomes looks for his rookie Rashied Rice often. I think it's going to happen here Conference Championship Weekend as we see who wins the AFC between the Ravens and the Chiefs. Looking ahead now to the NFC Championship game, 49ers and Lions. I love the props in this game. I think this game is going to go over. So Brock Purdy, more than 216.5 passing yards. Look, don't need to sugarcoat this. Brock Purdy did not play a great game in the divisional round. He completed 23 of 39 passes for 252 yards, threw another pass that should have easily been intercepted in rainy conditions. Luckily for him and the 49ers faithful, they made enough plays to beat the Green Bay Packers en route to the NFC Championship game where they would take on the Detroit Lions. And the Lions' pass defense just continues to bleed out yards to quarterbacks. The Lions have allowed an absurd number of passing yards over their last 5 games, nearly 375 passing yards per game. Detroit has also allowed the most passing yards to quarterbacks over the last 2 months. And so Purdy's been great at home this year, has 252 passing yards in every single game he's played at home this season. So with this number already very close to that, considering how bad the Lions defense is, I think Purdy's going to go more than his passing yards projection in the NFC Championship game. Same thing with Brandon Ayuk. Look, if Purdy's going to go over, we're going to see one of his receivers also go over here. Brandon Ayuk, more than 71.5 receiving yards. Ayuk made a bunch of critical plays last week, but was unable to post strong overall receiving numbers with only 3 catches and 36 yards on 6 targets, which was a 17% target share, because he still played 100% of the snaps, and he's going to be more involved if Deebo Samuel has to miss the next game. Considering it's a pain tolerance injury with Deebo Samuel's shoulder, he's going to have to rehab. He's giving him a 50-50 odds of playing in this game. The 49ers are going to game plan around not expecting to have Deebo Samuel. That's going to focus more attention on the offense between guys like Brandon Ayuk, McCaffrey, and George Kittle. So I like the Ayuk pairing with Purdy the most, looking at his receptions, receiving yards prop, 71.5. I just think that against this Lions horrible secondary, this is the absolute boom spot for Brandon Ayuk after a few down games. He's the primary downfield and air yards threat for the 49ers offense. Regression is going to come in a big way. The Lions rank first in air yards and second average depth of target faced this season. Ayuk has 310-yard games in his last 6, while finishing with fewer than 40 yards in the other 3. We saw Mike Evans break his cold spell against the Lions. I think we're going to see the exact same thing here with Brandon Ayuk in the NFC Championship game. Looking at the Lions side of things, Jared Goff, more than 254.5 passing yards. Look, the 49ers have allowed a ton of volume to opposing quarterbacks this year. Third most completions allowed to QBs this season. 4 of the last 6 quarterbacks they have faced have completed 22 or more passes. 8 of the 12 have hit over their completions prop. Jared Goff's completion prop is just too high for me, so I'm just going to go back to the yardage because he's going to see a ton of passing volume, especially if they're facing a negative game script as road underdogs. Goff has gone for at least 257 yards in 6 straight games. He's 270 or more in 5 of those 6 contests. So I'm going to take the over, the more than, on this Detroit Lions passing game. And of course, that means Amon-Ra St. Brown, come on down. Sun God, more than 7.5 receptions. Look, the Sun God let us down last week. He had a down game. He only had 77 yards despite 8 catches and 14 targets, 33% target share with 1 touchdown against the Buccaneers. But the 49ers are very weak, again, against giving up volume to receivers. 5th most catches to wide receivers allowed this season. Even after the Sun God came up short in the yardage props last week, there's little doubt he won't hit his catches prop in this spot. He has 7+ catches in 5 of his last 6 games. Take the more than 7.5 receptions for Amon-Ra St. Brown this weekend on PrizePicks. Going to also like the more than on his wide receiver teammate, Jameson Williams, more than 28.5 receiving yards. Williams saw 4 targets and 78 air yards last week, even though he played fewer snaps at 58% than Josh Reynolds, who played 78% of snaps, had 3 targets, and also scored against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The second-year speedster continues to see up and down usage alongside Josh Reynolds, which I don't love, but Jameson Williams still can deliver big playability. So that's all going right back to his more than. He hit it last week, and it's very low at 28.5 receiving yards. He has 40 or more receiving yards in 6 of his last 8 games played, going more than on JMO in the conference championship game. Going to the running back position to wrap up my final 2 favorite props. Jahmyr Gibbs, more than 70.5 receiving and rushing yards combined against the 49ers. Look, I like the more than on Gibbs rushing yards. He's at least 40 rushing yards in every single road game the Lions have played this season. He's also gone over 43 rushing yards in 7 of his last 9 games played this season. But there is some concern about negative game script the Lions might face, so they may get away from the run game, allowing Gibbs not necessarily to get to his rushing yards prop. So that's why I like the more than on his total yardage from scrimmage at 70.5, because if it's rushing, if it's receiving, he's going to deliver explosive plays, especially when you add his receiving yards to the fold. He has 40 or more receiving yards in back-to-back games. The last 6 of the last 10 running backs to face the 49ers have gone over their receiving yards projection. Aaron Jones had 6 targets last week. The 49ers are allowing the 8th most yards, 6th most targets, and 6th most catches to running backs this season. Jahmyr Gibbs, do not be surprised if he goes over 100 yards from scrimmage in this matchup. So I'm going to take the easy one here at 70.5. And if you want to dabble in more, the rushing and receiving I also like as well. Last but not least, David Montgomery, less than 45.5 rushing yards. The 49ers are going to be a much tougher defense to run on than pass on, especially with David Montgomery, who's not nearly as explosive as Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, last week, Aaron Jones was the first player in the last 51 games to rush for 100 yards against the 49ers' stout run defense. The run defense is going to settle in after being gashed from big explosive plays by Jones last week. I think that means they're going to limit David Montgomery, even if they can't stop Jahmyr Gibbs because he's more explosive. When you look at what they've given up, the 49ers have allowed fewer than 50 rushing yards to 7 of the last 8 running backs that they have faced before Jones' performance last week. And the only over that time was by James Conner, and that came on an explosive rush. So that plays in the strengths of Gibbs, like I talked about earlier, who ranks 3rd in the NFL in breakaway rate at 38%, versus Montgomery, who has a grand total of 1 rushing attempt of 15 yards since week 13. That's 1 time over his last 8 games. He has 1 inside his last 110 carries of rushing over 15 yards on 1 play. That's 5%. Look, David Montgomery's not going to get it done here, especially against a stout 49ers defense that only gives up explosive runs. So going to go more than on Gibbs, less than on David Montgomery, 45.5 rushing yards. Pound the under in the NFC title game. And that's going to tie a bow on my favorite PrizePicks selections. for NFL Conference Championship weekend. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and share with all your friends so that everybody can have profitable NFL Sundays on championship weekend. Play like a championship today. Again, and also be sure to check out the Betting Pros PrizePicks cheat sheet to find more plus EV plays in the NFL playoffs. Thanks for watching and good luck Conference Championship weekend.